In this session today, we will talk on basic concepts, that is, artifact, industry, culture, civilization, and revolution. Prehistory archaeology studies man and his work, but before the existence of written records. It tells us the story of a region, country, or nation, or people before it took to writing. It does not depend on the accounts of contemporary or later writers. It studies material remains of the past that were left by early man in the forms of movable and immovable objects. The movable objects include tools, weapons, implements, decorative pieces, art objects, etc., whereas immovable objects include open-air stations, caves, rock shelters, pits, huts, lake-dwelling sites, large monuments, graves, paintings, etc. To identify and define these cultural materials along with the stages or levels of their development, archaeologists employ different terms which are commonly referred to as basic concepts in archaeology. These will be discussed in this module thoroughly. An artifact is something made or given shape by human, such as a tool or a work of art and objects of archaeological interest. In archaeology, an artifact is an object recovered by some archaeological endeavor which may have a cultural interest. Examples include stone tools such as projectile points, pottery vessels, metal objects such as guns and items, or personal adornment such as buttons, jewelry, and clothing. D.K. Bhattacharya in 1978 has defined artifact as anything which results from man's interaction with the environment is an artifact. Of course, the meaning of the word itself refers to those which are artificially produced. Thus, when a natural pebble is used by a man, he is interacting with the environment, but he has not artificially fabricated any part of the environment. That is, the pebble is not an artifact. Dunnell in 1971, on the other hand, defined artifacts as anything which exhibits any physical attributes that can be assumed to be the result of human activity. This definition implies that the term artifact covers every form of archaeological find from stone axes, bronze daggers, and clay pots to butchered animal bones, carbonized seats, huts, and all other manifestation of human behavior that can be found in archaeological sites. Artifacts are distinguished from main body of archaeological features such as stratigraphic features, herds, and roads or biofacts or ecofacts, which are basically plant or animal remains recovered in archaeological contexts. Archaeologists work with the remains left by people, the tangible records of human activity. In archaeology, culture exists in the form of tools, pottery, burials, house styles, ornaments and art because their things are repeatedly found together. Artifacts are part of a people's material culture, but an axe is not culture, nor is a burial or a house. It is only when certain kinds of axes, burials, and houses are found together in several sites that archaeologists refer to the repeated association of artifacts as evidence of a culture. B. Gordon Childe in 1929 explained the concept of culture in archaeology by the following words. I quote, "We find certain types of remains, pots, implements, ornaments, burial rites, and house forms constantly recurring together. Such a complex of associated trait we shall term a cultural group or just a culture. We assume that such a complex is a material expression of what today would be called a people." Unquote. Archaeologists think of culture as possessing three components: the individual's own version of his or her culture, the diversified individual behavior that makes up the myriad strands of a culture, and shared culture, elements of a culture shared by everyone. Archaeological cultures consist of the material remains of human activity preserved at specific space and time at several sites. Culture areas are large geographical areas in which artifacts characteristic of an archaeological culture exist in a precise context of time and space. Man satisfies his needs by shaping his environment. These environmental objects shaped by him are cultural and become at once a simultaneous indicator of the three very important features of the part. The cultural objects decide the kind of need man wanted to approach with them. Most of our needs being the result of our biological requirements interacting with the environment, an indirect indication of the environmental stress can be deduced from these objects. Number 2. The cultural objects are also indicative of the degree to which the environmental constraint was meant to be overcome by the society. Number 3. The cultural objects reflect the technological status of the community. Industry. Industry, the word implies a manufacturing activity. So, any set of artifacts evidently fashioned or used by a single human group or prehistoric days is called an industry. In fact, the assemblage of artifacts of same age in a particular level of a site is described as an industry of that particular site. Sometimes a particular site may also be taken as evidence of several industries. Some examples of early lithic industries are Aldovan, Acheulean, Mousterian. Stone tool industry, displaying humanity's earliest technology, began more than 2 million years ago. These stone tools have survived in great quantities and now serve as a major means to determine the activities of hominids. Archaeologists have classified distinct stone tool industries on the basis of style and use. The earliest stone industry was found by paleoanthropologists L.S.B. Leakey and Mary Douglas Leakey in the Olduvai Gorge in what is now Tanzania in the 1930s, called the Oldowan industry. It dates from about 1.8 to 1.2 million years ago in the Pleistocene epoch and consisted of what the Leakeys call shoppers, shaped by heating one stone against another until a sharpened edge was achieved. This could be used for cutting or sewing, while the unflecked end could be used for smashing or crushing. The variety and members of choppers found at the site led Leakeys to identify the people who lined there as Homo habilis, implying able man. Remains of the Oldowan industry were also found in North Africa and Europe. Many early sites unearthed by paleoanthropologists show a more advanced tool industry, beginning with the Acheulean, which is dated from as early as 1.4 million years ago at Olduvai Gorge. The techniques for making tools in the Acheulean industry was a development of the earlier technique, namely striking one stone against another, but the choice of stone was refined, where flint, which was the ideal tool making material, was not available. Quartz, quartzite, and other rocks were used. As Acheulean industry progressed, so did the skill with which tools were made. A bifacial cutting implement emerged called a hand axe that had longer, straighter, sharper edges than the earlier chopper. The earliest hand axes were made with a hard hammer. More advanced techniques, however, began about 1 million years ago. Rather than simply smashing rock against a boulder, a raft hammer began to be used. In all, 18 different types of implements have been discovered for the Acheulean industry, including chisels, awls, anvils, scrapers, hammerstones, and round balls. The Acheulean industry was followed by the Mousterian, a flake tool rather than core tool industry associated with Neanderthal people and others living north of the Sahara and eastward to Asia. In addition to the Mousterian industry, two other distinct industries were found in Africa, south of the Sahara, the Pharaoh-Smith and the Sangon. In these, the flake tool was improved to become a blade. In the late Paleolithic, tools were becoming even more sophisticated. As many as 80 different types of implements have been unearthed for what are called the Perigordian and Aurignacian industries in Europe. It is believed that these tools were used for hunting and butchering, clothes making, and a great variety of other tasks that move early humankind closer to modern life. Civilization is a term that has been used in several related ways. Primarily, the term has been used to refer to the material and instrumental side of human cultures that are complex in terms of technology, science, and division of labor. Such civilizations are generally hierarchical and urbanized. According to E.B. Taylor, the origin of civilized institutions might be found in the simpler institutions of primitive people. If the stone axes made by Australian natives were like those found in ancient European river terrace, then perhaps marriage customs of the native Australians were similar to those among the Paleolithic inhabitants of Europe. He arranged this to reflect a three-level sequence of human development from simple hunting savagery, as he called it, through a stage of simple farming, which he called barbarism, to civilization, the most complex of human conditions. Morgan's stages of social evolution began with simple savagery and had human society reaching its highest achievements in a state of civilization. However, such definitions are problematic for archaeologists, anthropologists, and historians because it contains an overt value judgment that civilization is better, more advanced, and superior to other forms of social organization. Civilization, in the technical sense, are a specific type of human community, large, complex societies based on domestication of plants and animals. The most influential theories of civilization in the Western world in the early 20th century was a professor of prehistoric archaeology, B. Gordon Childe. Childe dealt elaborately on civilization with specific examples from different parts of the world and conclusively summarizes the following attributes of civilization. 1. Large urban centers. 2. Full-time specialist occupations. 3. Primary producers of food paying surpluses to deity or ruler. 4. Monumental architecture. 5. Ruling class exempt from manual labor. 6. System for recording information. 7. Development of exact practical sciences. 8. Monumental art. 9. Regular importation of raw materials. 10. Interdependent of classes, that is peasants, craftspeople, rulers. 11. State religion or ideology. 12. Persistent state structures. By the 1960s, anthropologists had dropped the concept of human progress and tried to find value-free ways to classify and compare human societies as a way to see more clearly what really was happening. In archaeology, the meaning of revolution is very wide, encompassing multiple facets of the society. The rapid transformation of the socio-cultural condition brought about by revolution should not be confused with sudden violent catastrophe. In archaeological terms, it broadly denotes culmination of progressive change in the economic structure and social organization of communities. The term was used by B. Gordon Childe as a suffix to Neolithic and urban, thus forming the phrase Neolithic Revolution and Urban Revolution. These were the important phases of progressive transformation of the socio-economic condition in the human history. The Neolithic Revolution is marked by gradual agriculture and consequent social organization. B. Gordon Child in 2004 has summarized different characteristics of Neolithic Revolution like cultivation of edible plants, domestication of animals, distinct tool kits, textile, pottery, burial rites, art and sculpture, temples, chieftainship. Child has also opined regarding Neolithic Revolution that it had other consequences besides increasing the population, and the exploitation might, in the end, help to provide for the surplus increase. Based on his discussion on Neolithic Revolution and civilization, Child has listed 10 basic characteristics of urban revolution, such as large population and large settlement, full-time specialization and advancement of division of labor, production of agricultural surplus to fund government, monumental public architecture, a ruling class, exact and predictive sciences, sophisticated art style, long-distance trade and the state. Thus, urban revolution marked the genital development of human society and a number of urban civilizations in the world, including the Indus Valley flourished in the world. Prehistoric archaeology studies ancient human societies primarily through their material remains such as habitational areas, tools, weapons, art objects, etc. Based on such material remains, archaeologists has to develop a picture of the past. While interpreting so, he employs some terms like artifacts, industry, culture, civilization, and revolution. To define an object made or identified by man with a purpose, to define several artifacts of the same age which are found at a certain site, to denote an assemblage of industries made by the people of the same stock, to denote larger unit than culture which comprises a number of quite independent culture, and lastly to describe the important phases of progressive transformation of the socio-economic condition in the human story. Without these basic concepts, one would be unable to study and interpret the antiquities of the past.